Passing the fitness test, that is the subject today. Hey, if you're liking this content, give me a like, subscribe, give me a comment below. I know there are some men out there who have passed some fitness tests. Pastor Dalrock wrote an article called Headship Game. We're in our series on how to be a Christian husband and have some game. Or I guess I hear the term is Riz now. I don't know. I have to look this up, what that means. Now, as you play the game as a husband, you're going to have frame. You got to have frame control, and also you're going to have to pass the fitness tests, sometimes called the sheetrock tests or the Shiat tests. We'll just call them fitness tests, though, today. Now, the article that Pastor Dalrock writes is called The Headship Game, and he gets to this part on fitness tests, and he says, your wife is craving your leadership, especially when she is in rebellion, which, if you've been a husband for any length of time, that's probably a lot. Anyway. Sometimes your leadership will be active, but other times all that she really needs is for you to remain her immovable rock, right? You're that rock on the seashore that the waves of her emotion can crash against. And you all know what I'm talking about. If you've been married, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, then you must be a real aloof dummy. Anyway. When she storms over you with her emotions, what she is craving is the reassurance that you won't be overwhelmed by the very thing which is overwhelming her at the moment. Be kind and loving in how you do this, but be the immovable anchor she can cling to, and don't allow her emotions to sweep you both away. This is a profound gift you can offer to your wife. This is good advice. This is hard to do, though. This is hard to do, when she starts bringing those emotions in, and you're just like, shut up. But, you can't say that, right? You can't be harsh. But sometimes you just you can't deal with it. You get tired of it. You're like, man, I can't take it anymore. You better go outside and just walk around a minute or whatever. I don't know. At times, Dalrock writes, this will mean that your wife will make unreasonable demands or do outrageous things to see how you will respond. Now, I am not going to describe some of the things that I consider outrageous that my wife has done in the past, because I'm not going to put that out here on the internet. But I think everybody I know can point to at least a couple of things that it was like, whoa, I didn't think my wife would ever do that or say that or whatever, right? The emotions are storming. Things happen, especially when they're pregnant. If your wife is pregnant, whoa, man, things get crazy then. They get crazy. You don't know what's happening. Sometimes you say, whoa, who's this person again? I don't know what happened. Anyway. It says your response to these must be ruled by your role as a loving Christian husband, but this doesn't mean that you should cave into unreasonable demands or encourage bad behavior. Now, that's a key. Don't encourage and reward bad behavior. Sometimes you should just say no with the fitness test that comes your way, and say no with the confidence of a righteous man who is being obedient to the Lord. Sometimes your best response to a wife who is being overwhelmed by her emotions is to simply pull her in to your strong embrace, letting her feel your gentle firmness as she makes a show of trying to push you away. Dalrock says if you find your faith and your ability to fulfill the role of headship faltering, recall the words of young David before he faced Goliath. I want to read this verse. Before I say, I'm like, man, if you are that much of a sissy that you consider your wife Goliath and you are David, like, man, you're in bad shape. You probably better just give up, dude. No, don't give up, but man, you're in bad shape. Anyway. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defiled the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. And God, just as an encouragement to you, Christian husband, God will deliver you from the hand of the uncircumcised wife when she is raging against you. That's a good encouragement, isn't it? Dalrock writes, if David could summon the strength to stand up to Goliath, you can summon the strength to do something far easier, to stand up and tell your wife, no, 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 no. No, don't do that. All right, don't do that. If you respond with confidence and in accord with your role as head of household, very often you will find your wife's mood changes with bewildering speed. However, your steadfastness must come from your faith in God and obedience to your responsibility as a husband to lead her, not from your faith in human psychology. If your response was righteous and loving, that's what matters, not whether your wife responds as desired. Note that this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be attentive and understanding to your wife's own personality and needs, and tune your leadership style to make it easier for her to honor her own obligation to submit to you. It doesn't mean you shouldn't seek and seriously consider your wife's counsel when making decisions which impact the family. The Bible tells us that husbands are the head of the wife, but it also tells us to dwell with them in an understanding way. You don't need to and must not become a tyrant of the home, but you need to be sensitive to when your headship is being challenged and respond firmly with Christian love when it is being challenged. Well, that's good advice. That's good advice from Dal Rock. Now, let me go over to a book. It's a pretty good book. I would recommend people read it. You got to be a little bit careful with it, but it's a good read. It's called The Married Man Sex Life Primer from 2011. Okay. It's by Athol K. He's got a section in it on fitness tests, and I thought I'd go over that a little bit. He's got some good stuff in this as well. Exactly the same thing that Pastor Dalrock is talking about. It says periodically women will fitness test their man. This can be quite purposeful and a conscious testing, or it can be unconscious testing that just springs up from seemingly nowhere. The simplest variant is when she suddenly just feels something negative, and the man must do something to alter the way she feels to something more positive. Quote, well, I don't feel like you really care about me. Why can't you bring me flowers once in a while? On one level, it seems reasonable as a request, but the language is one of manipulation. I feel a negative emotion, I feel in love, so you must complete a task, get me flowers, so I can feel positive emotions again and be happy. These tests start small, but over time that can grow larger and more demanding. The obvious intervention here is for the man to jump up and comply with her request, and this may appease her at first. If the husband runs out and gets flowers for her, she is happy for a few minutes, but then it can intensify. I don't like that I have to ask you for flowers. Why can't you just bring them to me without me having to ask you? Fitness testing is the female equivalent of a sonar ping, 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 to determine social status. Now that's key. That's key. In general, those of lower social status defer to those of higher social status. Women are hypergamous in their sexual attraction, so they are seeking their mate to be a higher social status than they are. So when the male suddenly jumps up and complies with her request and seeks to appease her, he is deferring to her and demonstrating lower social status relative to her social status. While her minor inconvenience for the moment is taken care of, she becomes less happy with him because she finds him less attractive. And again, we're talking about maintaining attraction in your marriage. So how do you pass a fitness test? Just say no. Then you don't give in to her intensifying reaction to the no. It's exactly the same sort of thing that happens with a kid crying for candy in the supermarket. When you say no to a kid crying for candy, the crying always gets louder and more emotional as they try to break your resolve. The solution is to just pay for your food and walk to the car. The kid has to follow. Again, sometimes a wife, it's like dealing with the oldest teenager in the house. Wives, of course, do not cry for candy, but they can dream up some near impossible tasks for a husband, like asking for a $20,000 kitchen remodel when she hardly cooks anyway, and they already are struggling with credit card debt. When a husband says no to that, you can bet he's going to get hit with some sort of emotional outburst as she seeks to break his will and grant her a better kitchen to not cook in. If he sticks to his guns, she will probably be emotionally upset. But after her initial angry mood passes, she will be happier and more attracted to her husband. As the husband shows this dominant frame, she responds with increased attraction for him. Now, I've personally experienced this, and it's kind of interesting to me that I can say no and be firm, and it's, she's mad, but then just like the same day, then it's like she's more happy. It's weird. It's the weirdest phenomena. I would have never even guessed that would have existed until you start reading this stuff. You say, wow, boy, this is the game. Folks, this is the game. This is what we're talking about. Christian husband game. This is the game. You got to win the game. And if you don't think you're playing a game, then I can almost guarantee you're losing the game. Now, then the author goes into what is and is not a fitness test. Most fitness tests your wife will toss at you will come in a few standard variations that are seemingly easily spotted, but they also come very close to things that aren't fitness tests as a wall. The trouble is figuring out which is a fitness test and which is not. You can mess up just as fast by failing a fitness test as by bumping back on her on something that wasn't one in the first place. If she was trying to be genuinely nice and you tell her off, that's legitimately going to upset her. Importantly, most times when the woman isn't even aware of the testing nature of what she's doing. So there's no easy way to just ask her what's up either. That's right, you can't ask your wife, hey, is this a fitness test that I need to pass? Because they won't know. Most of the time, they won't even know that they're fitness testing you. This is like something subconscious that happens. And that's what he says. He says, importantly, most times the woman isn't even aware of the testing nature of what she's doing. So there's no easy way to just ask her what's up. If you happen to get tangled up with a woman who is consciously testing you and gaining some kind of pleasure from watching you squirm, it's about the worst red flag there is for a relationship. Here are some basic fitness test variations. The small request test. This is where she asks you to do something that she is perfectly capable of simply so that she doesn't have to. These are often small tasks that barely require any effort, so you can unwittingly start performing them for her simply to be polite or nice. But if you're starting to find yourself being her butler, then you've established that she is the dominant one in the relationship and you are displaying lower value. A tip-off is if she is seated on something and instead of getting up to get it, she asks you to get it and bring it to her. Also, there is the small request non-test. A request to perform a small task where you have natural advantages over her is a request non-test. For example, his wife is very short and he's very tall, so when she asks me to put away something in the kitchen that goes very high in the cabinet, it just makes sense that he does it. But then the fitness test of I'm a cute girl test. A request to comply with something simply because she has asked for it in a coy, seductive manner. And being a boy, you are powerless before potential punani. There's usually some sort of inflection of voice that tips this off. The request is an unreasonable one, such as getting out of an unwanted task or getting something from you like a drink or money. It's best not to comply and find a way to get her to do it if she is perfectly capable of doing it. Then there's the I'm a cute girl non-test. This is a reasonable request, but comes with a quite purposeful, aware of display of sexiness. She purposely is using a request as an excuse to be sexually playful with you and display her interest in you. The question request is just a cover. He says his wife tends to have an almost comic approach with this and sometimes loads up small request non-test with a dose of sexual coyness just for fun. So it's a game. You play the game, she plays the game, everybody plays the game. It's fun. And if you don't know you're playing the game, you're probably losing the game. Then there's the I'm getting emotional about this test. As soon as a woman finds out her tears is your kryptonite, you're in deep doo-doo. Don't respond to her drama and hysteria over minor things. Sometimes this is tied into her menstrual cycle, but typically the women who reach for this tool use it an awful lot. After a while, the entire relationship can be based on her mood swings. She is unhappy about X, so you must do something about X right now. She is unhappy about Y. Why can't you fix Y? Z also displeases her. The more you cater to her, the worse it gets. until eventually she becomes the unhappiest woman in the world and you are near death from exhaustion. Don't follow that. Say no, no, no. Then there's the I'm getting emotional about this non-test. This is when something really does happen that isn't trivial or minor and she's upset. Everyone has a bad day once in a while. As long as she's not making a lifestyle of it, you should be standing in, standing up, and standing with her during these moments. The key here is not to try and bail her out of a bad situation and solve her problem for her, but to be present and available to her in aiding and solving it herself. Sometimes you just have to let them cry it out for a bit. You got to know that. And this is, I think this is kind of hard sometimes to know which one is a fitness test and which one is not. Then there's the badly inconveniencing you request test. This is where she asks you to do something that would cost her a little of her time, but cost you a lot of yours. So can you pick up the girls from school today when school is 5 minutes round trip from home on a work from home day for her while you have to leave work early to get to the school on time? This is a big test. Just say no. Or there's the sexual denial test. You can't have any sex from me now because insert statement of accusation of what you did or did not do. This is just cruel and really eats away at the relationship. Personally, I just reflect that verbally back to her and say that it's dirty tactics. The other version is simply saying she doesn't feel in the sexual mood. It's not you, just that she doesn't feel sexy or sexual anymore. At this point, you start talking about visiting doctors and naturally running the MAP on her. Now, that's from another part of the book, the MAP, the male action plan. There's the not responding to your calls test. You're calling and texting her and she's blowing you off. Can't find my phone. I'm kind of busy. I'm dancing on my favorite song. I can't text with a drink in my hand. I'm just dancing. The whole Lady Gaga telephone BS. Slap this down as soon as possible. It's very rude. Or lastly, the remodeling the house test. The house is actually fine and isn't broke, but she somehow needs something torn out and rebuilt with something more expensive. Doesn't add much value, if any. You got to say no. Just slap those down. He says there's a second date rule in regard to fitness tests. He says a quick and dirty way of deciding if something is a fitness test is the second date rule. Here's the second date rule. If what she just did happened on the second date, would there have been a third date? If the answer is no, then it's a fitness test. So this is the fitness test. I probably went on a little long on that, but are you passing the fitness tests? If you're not playing the game, this is the Christian husband game. If you're not playing the game, if you're not passing the fitness test, then I can guarantee that you're failing the game and you're failing the test too. If you say, oh, my wife never does that, oh, come on. Yes, she does. Yes, she does. And we got to pass them. And we got to get it turned around. And what we also must realize is that Christ is winning. He is building his church, and he promised the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Post Millennial Man.